Coming up on the Sky News Daily with me, Niall Paterson. The new Netflix drama Adolescence shines an uncomfortable spotlight on the violence being committed by boys and young men. Research seen by Sky News suggests reasons why.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kelnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100, every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.
Everyone is talking about Adolescence, the series by Knowsley's own Stephen Graham and Christine Tamarco. It highlights online male radicalisation and violence against girls. The creators of the show are calling for screenings in Parliament and schools to spark change. So will the Prime Minister back this campaign to counter toxic misogyny early and give young men the role models they deserve?
Yeah. Prime Minister.
Yes, and at home we are watching Adolescence with our children. I've got a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl, and it's a very, very good documentary to watch or drama.
If you haven't seen it, it's the story of the Miller family after 13-year-old Jamie is arrested for killing a girl in his class.
The picture got passed around the school. Snapchat, it was just her. Top half. Not anything else. She sent it to Fidget and then he sent it on.
Now, to describe it as an uncomfortable watch would be to do it a disservice. Frankly, I struggled to get to the very end. Here's the show's writer, Jack Thorne.
Doing this show, I spent a lot of time in a lot of dark places. I saw where the web went, and it's not about Andrew Tate. Andrew Tate is the shorthand for adults. There's much worse stuff out there, and unless we look at that and talk about that, things are only going to get worse.
The show was released as we learnt that crossbow killer Kyle Clifford had searched for misogynistic content online shortly before murdering 3 members of the Hunt family. Then there's Nicholas Prosper. He killed his own mother, brother and sister. His internet history showed he was fascinated by the Columbine school massacre and was planning one of his own. So what, if anything, can be done to stop this radicalisation, this tendency for lonely, marginalised young men to turn to violence? Here's Stephen Graham, who played the dad in Adolescence.
Society as a whole can look at this. Parents obviously can look at this, and the government in many ways, you know what I mean? So,
well, look, as we've all been processing the 4-parter Adolescence, Sky News has had exclusive access to research suggesting that what our kids see online could be a driving force in this rise in violence. Tamara Cohen is our political correspondent. Hi, Tamara.
Hi, Neil.
And Lola McEvoy is Labour MP for Darlington, who put the research together. Lola, lovely to meet you. Well, let's start with that research. I mean, what prompted you to do this in the first place?
So online safety for children is one of the defining issues of our time. And on the doorstep in Darlington, it came up time and time again. It cuts through your political allegiances. It cuts through what type of background you've got. And parents are sounding the alarm because they're concerned that their kids aren't safe online. And I think I decided to get the young people together because even though I'm, really old now, I still remember being 14 and I thought about it and I thought, what's the best way for us to actually find out what's going on? Let's get the young people to tell us.
They were absolutely great. And this issue is really rising up the political agenda. And we hear so much from parents who are worried about what their kids see and campaigners who say maybe we shouldn't have social media. But we don't often get to spend a couple of hours with teenagers saying, tell us what you actually see online. Tell us where the actual problems are.
Okay, so really specifically, what did they say in terms of what they saw, the sort of material that we wouldn't want our children to be seeing? I mean, how prevalent is it?
Very. So there were 1,000 teenagers in Darlington who responded to this survey. So it's a snapshot of one town, but it obviously resonates more widely. We split them into the over 16s and under 16. So the teenagers in general, all ages, 40% are spending at least 6 hours a day online, and 20% are spending upwards of 8 hours a day. So that's more time they're spending at school, they're spending online. Many of them sort of late into the night. When we asked the under 16 specifically, so 55% had seen inappropriate sexual or violent content. They were also asked, were you searching for it? And half the time they said they weren't searching for it, it just came up. So suggests it was driven by algorithms, which of course government tech companies say shouldn't be happening. Now, they were asked, when you're asked your age, do you put in your real age or do you put in an older age? And plenty of them admitted that sometimes they do put in an older age. But even the ones who put in their actual age said they'd seen inappropriate content. There was also a concerning finding about being contacted by strangers. Now, obviously, some of this is in the context of online gaming where you play with strangers and that's part of the drill. So not all of it is unwelcome. But 3/4 of the under 16s had in some way been contacted by a stranger online. And I thought it was particularly interesting with the girls when we said, what things do you not like about the online world? What would you just switch off with a switch if you could? It was strangers commenting on my photos, making humiliating, disparaging comments about my photos and my videos and just sort of putting me down.
I mean, Lola, this sounds like an entirely unregulated space, but it clearly isn't.
Well, the Online Safety Act is coming into force, as we speak, and some of the more disturbing content that is illegal should be tackled by the latest changes in the Online Safety Act. But there is another section which is what they call lawful but awful, and that came up quite a lot when we were talking to the young people.
I've never heard that phrase before.
I know, well, it's a good one because it explains it quite clearly. And actually, what it's led me to believe is that there's 5 elements here, right? So there's strangers, 75% have been contacted by somebody they don't know. That is shocking. Then there's content, the type of content they're seeing and the appropriateness of that content for their age group or for anybody to be seeing. Then there's peer-to-peer, and that came up quite a lot, that actually it's exacerbating what would be normally school-place bullying, which happens, and unfortunately it does happen in schools, but it's exacerbating that peer-to-peer bullying. Then there's the addiction point of how long they're spending on it, and then there's the behaviours that are seeping into everyday life, which is, as you mentioned about this Adolescence programme that I watched 2 episodes last night, I was absolutely shocked, but it's how does it seep into the way they're behaving offline. And it's led me to think, some of the functionalities of these platforms, are they even suitable at all for children? So suggested friends, when I asked them outright, is there a reason that you need people to be suggested as your friends when you could meet them at school or in a normal social setting and you could add them? And they agreed there probably isn't a reason for suggested friends. Added to groups without consent came up quite prevalently. So the idea that somebody who knows you could just add you to this group, and in that group
on
there'll
one
be
of those
strangers
social media
on a social media platform. But then if you leave the group, you can still be re-added, and in that group there'll be content. So some of the young people were talking about some of the content is very deeply disturbing, and they can't get out of these groups. So that's obviously not a suitable function. And then the other one is suggested content at all. And I suppose I am leaning towards the side that isn't suitable for young people either. If they're searching out that they want to listen to a particular podcast or watch a particular video or play a particular game, that's one thing. But if they are being suggested content, how do you actually regulate that? And the final one is disappearing messages. So that came up quite a lot, that it's impossible to prove, so they don't flag it.
Plenty of them said, I've seen things in reported content that I thought was wrong. Some of them actually talked about telling adults about it, which was quite positive. But when bullying goes online, so, episodes at school are filmed and sent to lots of people, they say those messages disappear. So you can't tell your teacher, this is here, because it's gone. And then it gets shared by lots of people, but you never find the person who kind of initially filmed it and shared it. It feels like there's no consequences because there's no paper trail. No one knows who initially did it or sent it. Or
I think the other thing is on reporting. They said that reported content to the platforms and then they'd seen that content again. So the same video, and that is obviously needs to be changed.
From everything both of you have said, it strikes me that if you are a young person who is online, this sort of material is unavoidable.
Yeah. Some of the kids we spoke to had seen it more than others. There were quite a few of the teens in the focus group talked about, voluntarily brought up this sort of gore, violence, and they said that once they start it, I think the issue is once they start seeing it, even if they kind of flick it away and don't watch the whole thing, they keep seeing more and more and more of it.
It's all linked, right? So if 75% of them have been contacted by somebody they don't know, and you can be added to chats with people you don't know, again, without consenting
Who
to
are
it,
adults.
who could be adults, could be children. The point is, in those groups, if there's a link, you click on it, that affects your algorithm. So then when you go to scroll for something else, you're doing what they call doom scrolling, where you're scrolling through and the algorithm has been fed this content because you clicked on a link by somebody. So it becomes a really dangerous space for young people.
So why is the government doing not as much as others. I mean, obviously, online safety legislation going through, starting to pick up steam in terms of the impact that it will have. But and take a look at Australia, for goodness sakes. I mean, they have banned social media use for under 16s. I mean, why are we not having that conversation in this
So
country?
we are having the conversation. We're definitely having the conversation. I'm shouting really loud about it.
But
I'm making sure.
You are but one voice, and I'm not hearing this from the front bench
Well,
to the same extent.
I would just say the government's position is really clear that we have now commissioned an inquiry to make sure that it's evidence-based on the impact of social media and phone use on young people.
Find me a parent who doesn't think that social media has a negative effect on their kids. They
Well,
can tell you that right now.
I think it's interesting because what parents are actually calling for is to be given clear guidance. What they want is a consistent approach, and that's where legislation really comes to the fore. Some people will always go around it and, not implement it for their own children or whatever. But actually, if there's a red line that says it is harmful for children to spend this amount of time online, they're going to have the backing of the government to then enforce it with their children. Because what they're telling me is that they're faced with an impossible choice from their own kids, house by house, that actually the young people are saying, give us the phone, Mum, give us the phone. I want to play on the game. I want to do this. And actually, they need more support.
Doesn't that beg the question then? I mean, who is ultimately at fault? I mean, Stephen Graham, the father in Adolescence, says we have a collective responsibility. But surely it just comes back to the companies themselves.
It was really interesting in the discussion when we asked the kids, how many hours do you spend online? It really varied. There were some who said, my mum takes my phone off me at 8 p.m. I still spend 3 hours on it, but then at night time it's gone and I don't like it and I fight it every day, but that's what happened. And there were some who didn't. And, obviously, people have different setups, parents work shifts, they have 4 kids. I think the other big issue is the amount of schoolwork that needs to be done online. So kids do, need their phones if they don't have a laptop to do schoolwork. So a lot of things come into it, but it would certainly be helpful for parents to have more guidance or for schools to be able to say, here is the government's guidance about what's good for your children. In terms of sort of implementing, so the Online Safety Act was passed at the end of 2023, but it's only being implemented this year. And there are lots of different stages to it because the companies are first of all supposed to remove illegal content, of which some is priority illegal content. We're talking about child sexual exploitation, terrorism, stuff like that. Then you've got illegal content, some of which is violence. And then you've got content that's harmful to children. And those decisions are more difficult. Now, some countries are going further than we are, but the difficulty is, and I think we're all going to be watching very closely what happens in Australia. They've said they want to ban social media for under 16s. They haven't done it yet, and no one's quite sure how they're going to do it because a lot of this relies on very strict age verification, which is not just about saying, I'm 14, it's about having ways to check that. And there are a lot of questions about how this works, but I think if they can make it work, it would certainly be something other countries would be looking to follow. But surely stopping under 16s being contacted by adult strangers is a no-brainer.
I think what I found heartening was the number of young people who would tell a teacher or tell their parent about somebody contacting them or something they've seen. But the solution they came up with, I think, is totally reasonable. So they said, we'd like a space where there aren't any weirdos. That's what they said. So they want a space where they can't be contacted by strangers, where they don't see this kind of content. If they flag that there's bullying or peer-to-peer or there's somebody behaving weirdly, they can then be removed from that space. So I think that is not beyond the realms of government or these platforms to do.
Just a kind of a final thought from both of you on Adolescence. We've all watched it. I've watched it all the way through. This is kicking off a discussion, and it's a much needed one from my perspective anyway.
What was so powerful about it is it's just these hidden worlds that are in plain sight. The kids are on their phones. We know they're on their phones, and most parents have a vague awareness of what Snapchat and TikTok are, but they don't know what they're looking at, and they don't know how what they're looking at drives other things. And I think this is just the start of a bigger discussion on this. One of the MP who brought a bill a couple of weeks ago said this is a bit like smoking or seatbelts. It doesn't happen in one fell swoop, it happens gradually, and it's frustrating, but we're not going to go backwards in terms of online safety.
And I think, young people are always going to push the boundaries. Yeah. They're always going to do things
that
their parents don't know about. And that is part of growing up. It's part of their development. The problem is that when we were playing out as kids, the risks that we faced were far fewer than the extreme risks that young people are facing online. And that's the big difference. So that's where legislation comes in. And that's where I'm so pleased that we've got, this platform to talk about this vital issue.
Now, of course, we did contact those companies, Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, all contacted for comment, but they didn't provide an on-the-record statement on the comments from the teenagers. Still, the companies insist they take issues of safety and age-appropriate content seriously. Instagram is rolling out teen accounts, which they say will limit who can contact teenagers and the content they can see. Snapchat and TikTok say accounts for under 16s are set to private. And you can hear more from Tamara about that research in Darlington. Just head to skynews.com. The Daily is back again tomorrow. We'll see you then.
Donald Trump is heading back to the White House.
Together we can truly make America great again.
We are in for an unpredictable but fascinating 4 years.
And we're going to be following every twist and turn for the first 100 days. We'll be bringing you the latest updates and analysis first thing every morning. So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Martha Kalnick.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Trump 100 every weekday at 6 a.m, wherever you get your podcasts.